What disturbed Ezra Delacroix that morning was not the silence, but the way it imposed itself. His apartment, on the top floor of a glass-enclosed building in Paris, usually vibrated faintly with the sounds of the city. Distant car horns, muffled conversations, the occasional flutter of pigeons, wings above the skylight. But today, it was as if the world outside had ceased to exist. It was in this thick silence that he noticed something out of place. On his glass desk, among the contracts and letters from the family law firm, lay a black envelope. It was heavy, made of thick paper, with gold edges and a red wax seal bearing an enigmatic symbol, a mirror split in half. Ezra frowned. He was sure he hadn't been here last night. There was no way anyone could get into the apartment undetected. And even if they did, why would they leave an envelope? And that was it? He approached, feeling his heart tighten with an uneasiness he couldn't explain. He touched the seal with his fingers. Was it still warm? Maybe it was just his imagination. Ezra Delacroix was a practical man, a skeptic by birth. And yet something in the air, something on the paper, smelled of jasmine and smoke. Scents that didn't belong here. He tore the seal. Inside was a cream-colored sheet of paper with 3 lines written in flowing, feminine handwriting. Ezra, your room is reserved. Come before the next full moon. Alessia. Alessia. The words seemed to hang in the air like an old name someone had whispered deep in his memory. Ezra blinked. The name sent shivers down his spine, not because of its threat, but because of its inexplicable intimacy. He had never met an Alessia. He was sure of it, and at the same time, he felt homesick. The sheet of paper gave off a sweet, hypnotic scent. Below the letter, held together with black velvet ribbon, was a metal object, an antique key, darkened bronze, with spiral carvings and the number 13 hand engraved on the base. Ezra held it between his fingers. Heavy, authentic, cold, and there was no address, no clue, no instructions beyond those few words. It was an invitation, or a riddle. He slowly sat down in the chair by the window. He looked out over Paris. The city seemed, for the first time, distant from him, as if he were no longer a part of it. 3 hours later, unable to think of anything else, he called his assistant. I need you to cancel all appointments for the next 7 days. Of course, sir. Delacroix. Any specific reason? I'm taking a vacation. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Ezra didn't take vacations. He never did. Should I schedule a stay, reserve? No. I already have a destination. And he hung up. The next day, he boarded a night flight to Verona. It was during the journey that he began to feel the first signs of deep restlessness. It wasn't fear. It was something else. A sensual, almost erotic anxiety that arose without any apparent cause, as if he were getting closer to something he wanted very much, although he didn't yet know what it was. In the taxi that took him through the hills of the Italian countryside, the sky was already turning the horizon a dark orange. The surrounding mountains seemed to watch him, motionless, like old men who knew secrets. The road was winding and surrounded by tall trees, and the driver, a quiet man with gray hair, did not say a single word during the entire journey. The car finally stopped in front of a wrought iron gate, covered in ivy and shadows. Ezra rolled down the window. There was no doorbell, no sign that there was a hotel there. And yet, he knew it was the right place. The driver held out his hand. Ezra handed him some euro notes, but the man refused. He simply pointed to Ezra's pocket, where key number 13 was, and said in a hoarse voice, "She already paid." Who? But the driver was already back in the car. Within seconds, the taxi disappeared into the fog on the road. Ezra took a deep breath and pushed the gate, which opened easily, though it felt too heavy for that. On the other side, there was a stone path that led to an imposing building of classical architecture, with columns that stood like sentinels. The place resembled a palace from other centuries. But the strangest thing was the absence of windows. Not a single opening. Just smooth walls of pale stone and dark wooden doors. As he walked through the entrance hall, a chill ran down his spine. The place was lit by lit chandeliers, casting soft shadows on the walls. The air smelled of old wood, lavender, and something else, Something he couldn't name. There was a reception desk. Behind the counter, woman with fine features, porcelain skin, and hair tied in a severe bun watched him. She smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was as if she knew something he didn't. Mr. Delacroix, welcome to the Hotel d'Ether. I didn't make a reservation. Your room is ready. Room number 13. She held out her hand. The key, please. Ezra handed her the bronze object. She received it as if holding a sacred reliquary. The elevator won't show that number, but it will recognize it. He nodded, not knowing exactly what that meant. He headed towards the elevator with golden doors. Inside, a panel with numbers from 1 to 12. No button for 13. Ezra stood still for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket for the key. The panel glowed. For a moment, a red light pulsed between the 12 and 1 buttons. A number appeared, 13, and then disappeared. The doors closed. The hallway on the 13th floor was as silent as a mausoleum. The walls were covered in silver-gray fabric. The floor was dark wood, and at the end of the hallway was a door with the number 13 carved in cast iron. Ezra turned the key. The click he heard seemed to resonate inside his chest, as if it were opening something more than just a door. The room was dimly lit. Heavy curtains blocked what little light could come in from outside. But then again, he noticed, there were no windows. The bed was large, a 4-poster, with dark sheets and satin pillows. An oval mirror took up half the wall opposite, covered by a black silk veil. The air inside was warmer, thicker. Ezra closed the door behind him, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like he wasn't alone. Ezra Delacroix was not an impressionable man. From a young age, he learned to tame logic and stifle instinct, a quality inherited from a family where emotion was synonymous with weakness. That is why, when he found himself inside room 13, he preferred to attribute the restlessness he felt to the exhaustion of the trip, the wine served on the plane, or the purposefully diffuse lighting of that place. Still, something made him hesitate. The room was spotless, luxurious, and silent. There was no television, no telephone, not even a clock. The black curtains were drawn. There seemed to be windows behind them. But when he pulled back one of the heavy velvet folds, he found only walls behind curtains. No windows, no openings. Room 13 was an elegant prison. Ezra slowly released the fabric and stepped back. It bothered him more than it should have. In the center of the room, on a round table, lay a handwritten note, written in dark ink. The night here is best heard with your eyes closed. Let yourself be guided by the sounds. Alessia. The handwriting was the same as the initial letter. Ezra ran his fingers over the words, trying to decipher the woman behind them. Who was Alessia? Why did he know her name? Why this invitation? Why now? From the corner of the room, he noticed an open bottle of wine and a single crystal glass. There were no fingerprints on the surface, no traces of lips on the glass, and yet the aroma gave it away. Someone had recently been drinking there. He hesitated. Then he raised the glass to his nose. The scent was deep, thick, with notes of red fruits and something else, a faint hint of jasmine, the same scent as the letter. He took a sip. The flavor was intense, almost provocative, as if each sip pushed him into a state of numbness, disguised as pleasure. He slumped down in the armchair next to the bed. The upholstery was too soft. Or maybe it was just that he was becoming more fragile. His body relaxed, but his mind remained alert. Across the room, the mirror, still covered by the black silk veil, seemed to breathe. Ezra slowly stood up and walked towards him. He stopped inches away. He reached out and pulled back the veil. Beneath the fabric, the mirror revealed her reflection. But there was something strange. The glass didn't exactly reflect the room as it was. The bed, for example, was unmade. The wine glass was empty. And behind Ezra, there was someone. A woman. Ezra turned immediately, but he was alone. He looked back. The reflex was normal now. There was no more woman. The cup was as before. The bed was still intact. The image in the mirror had returned to the present. Or maybe he had imagined it. Even so, she left the veil down. She wanted to see. She needed to see. That night, When he finally lay down, the feeling of being watched wouldn't leave him. It was as if the darkness breathed with him, as if the room had lungs of its own, and an unblinking gaze. He turned off the light. The room was plunged into a dense, absolute darkness. Not a ray of moonlight, not a single emergency light, not a single reflection. Just his breathing and another. Yes, he heard it. A soft whisper. Feminine. Very low. Ezra. He sat up in bed, alert. Who's there? Silence. He stood up and felt his way to the mirror. The air seemed more humid, thick, as if the atmosphere here was different from the rest of the room. He brought his face closer. For a second, he thought he saw another image in the mirror. A female silhouette, her face partially hidden by her hair. Her eyes were open, staring at him. It wasn't a reflection, it was a presence. Ezra blinked, and the image faded. He went back to bed, but he didn't sleep. He lay there for hours, listening to the silence that wasn't silence. There were layers there, hidden sounds, heartbeats other than his own, whispers under the carpet. And then, around 3 in the morning, a new note appeared under the door. He only saw it when he woke up, sweating, his heart racing. On the second night, you will hear more. On the third, you will remember. Don't fight it. Alessia. The next morning, he went to reception. The woman from the day before was still there, as if she hadn't moved for a second. The same bun, the same coldness. Who is Alessia? He asked. She looked at him lightly and answered as if it were obvious. The one who invites, the one who sees, the one who has been with you before. I've never met any Alessia. Of course you did. Maybe not by that name. Ezra felt a shiver run up his spine. What is this place? The receptionist tilted her head slightly, as if gauging his reaction. The Hotel d'Ether is not for those seeking comfort. It is for those who are ready to listen. You were called because you were carrying something you had forgotten. And here, forgetfulness is not allowed for long. He laughed, a dry, humorless laugh. What about room 13? Why doesn't it appear on the elevator panel? Because room 13 only exists for those who have a key. She then closed the notebook, without saying another word. Ezra climbed slowly. On the way back, he noticed that the hallways had changed subtly. The curtains were in a different position. There was a new mirror at the end of the hall, and as he passed it, he swore he saw someone behind him, a shadow that disappeared before he could even turn his head. Back in the room, he found the wine glass full again, and a new note on the bed. Today, don't close your eyes. Listen with your skin. Alessia. Ezra sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the mirror. He knew something inside was watching him, and for the first time, he wasn't sure he wanted to leave. Ezra spent the entire day inside room 13. He tried to leave, exploring other floors of the Hotel d'Ether, but as he walked through the hallways, everything began to repeat itself. Stairs led to the same place. Doors that had previously been open were now locked. It was as if the hotel rearranged itself around him, keeping him trapped weakly but precisely. When he returned to the room, the wine bottle was full again, although he had emptied it that morning. Once again, there was a note. You've already started to remember, but you're still listening with fear. Look deeper. Alessia. He took the paper between his fingers and noticed that the scent on it was different from the previous ones. It wasn't just jasmine. There was something else, something he knew but couldn't name. Like an old perfume that someone very close to him used, or that he had only dreamed about once. When night fell, Ezra was again before the mirror. The silk veil still lay on the floor, as if it had been removed by invisible hands. The oval mirror seemed larger now, or perhaps it was closer. The candles flickered. Their reflected flames danced in the glass with a strange delay, as if the mirror were not reflection but interpretation. Ezra sat in the leather chair across from him, his wine glass in his hand. The liquid seemed darker than usual, almost black, a thicker taste, almost bitter. So listen, Ezra. It wasn't like the night before. It wasn't a lost whisper. It was a clear, intimate voice, low, but alive. He froze, his eyes fixed on the mirror. Don't be alarmed, said the voice. You heard me, after all. The image in the mirror flickered slightly. At first, He saw only his own reflection. But then a figure began to emerge behind it, first as a shadow, then as an outline. A woman, tall with long dark hair. Her eyes were deep and liquid, as if they had been molded from the same darkness that inhabited that place. She wore a black tunic, tight to her body, as if it were made of smoke. Ezra turned quickly, but there was no one behind him. He looked back into the mirror. She was still there. "You don't see me with your eyes." "Not yet," she said. He moved closer to the mirror. Her face moved closer too, until it was inches from his, separated only by the glass. "Who are you?" She smiled, and there was an inexplicable warmth in that gesture. "I am the one who stayed when you left. I am the echo you learned to ignore, the memory you didn't have the courage to keep." Ezra swallowed hard. "Alessia?" She nodded, but didn't say the name. She just looked at him as if she was both sorry and longing at the same time. "Why did you call me?" "Because your memory is undoing me," she said. "And if you forget for good, I will cease to exist." "Is this a game? A hallucination?" "No," he replied. "It's the reflex." Ezra took a deep breath. He was sweating, even though the room was cold. Part of him wanted to get out of there. The other part wanted to step into the mirror. "I don't remember you," he said. "No, not yet. But your body remembers. Your skin knows." Alessia ran her hand over the glass. Ezra saw the trail of her fingers drawing a spiral across the inside of the mirror, as if time itself were being distorted. "Why room 13? He asked. She leaned her forehead against the mirror, her eyes closed. For a moment, she seemed to feel something, a deep emotion. Then she opened her eyes again. "Because this is where you left me." In the early hours of the morning, Ezra woke up with an inexplicable heat in his chest. He was lying in bed, covered only by a sheet, but his skin was damp, as if he had run for miles. The mirror emitted a faint glow. He sat up. The air in the room seemed thicker, as if it were made of silk and murmurs. And then he saw Alessia, but not in the mirror. She was in the bedroom, or it seemed to be. She stood in the center, her feet bare, her hair streaming down her back. Her skin glowed like wet amber in the dim light. She didn't speak. She just looked at him. Ezra wanted to ask something, but his mouth was dry. His entire body reacted, not with fear, but with a primal excitement that came from deep within. She walked towards him. Her every step seemed to move the air, change the temperature of the space. "I am your absence," he whispered. "The part you locked away so deep that only a room like this could unlock it." She touched his face. The touch was cold and at the same time burning. Ezra tried to grab her, but his hand passed through her as if through fog. She wasn't made of the same stuff. "You can't touch me yet," she said. "Why?" "Because you still deny me." She leaned in and pressed her lips to his ear. "But tomorrow, you will start to remember." And then it was gone. It didn't fall apart. It was just no longer there. Ezra stood there, sweating, breathing fast. The wine glass, now lying beside the bed, spilled an inky black liquid onto the carpet. He was shaking, not out of fear, but of desire. Alessia disappeared. Keeping his eyes closed was too risky, not because he was afraid of the dark, but because he was afraid of what might happen if he let himself relax. Because now he knew. He wasn't alone in that room. Maybe he never had been. The next morning, there was another note on the table, written in the same handwriting. "If you want to understand the mirror, read what is beneath your feet. Every forgotten memory leaves a trace. Alessia." Ezra stood up slowly, his muscles tense, as if he had been fighting with his body all night. He looked at the rug. Nothing. But then he crouched down, pulling lightly on the edge that covered the wooden floor. That's when he felt it. One of the floorboards gave slightly under his touch. As he pressed harder, it creaked, not with the sound of something breaking, but with the sound of something giving out of habit. He lifted it, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, wrapped in dark fabric, was a rectangular object, a diary. The red cloak, made of worn leather, still held the warmth of whoever had left it there, though it shouldn't have been warm. A satin ribbon wrapped around the inside. When he untied it, the smell that emerged was pungent, sweet perfume, dried sweat, and fear. The first few pages were blank. Then the calligraphy began. Feminine, delicate, but unstable. The letters danced between coherence and despair. The paragraphs seemed like diaries of someone in internal erosion. Day 1. I arrived at the Hotel d'Ether. It's impressive. The silence here is almost beautiful. I haven't met anyone yet except the woman at the front desk, who doesn't seem to sleep. My room is 13. I found it curious. Nobody seems to have complained about staying in 13. Ezra turned the page. Day 2. The mirror is covered, but I don't know why. I felt like pulling the veil away. When I did, I thought I saw my reflection smile before I did. Maybe I'm tired. Day 3. There's a voice. At night, it says my name with a tenderness that scares me. I should get out of here, but I don't want to. Day 4. I kissed the mirror. I was alone, but I swear on everything that is real. It kissed me back. Ezra paused for a moment. The room seemed darker now, though the light hadn't changed. He sat on the floor, reading each word with a growing sense of déjà vu. Day 5. Alessia said he would come. Said his name would be Ezra. Said he would bring the last piece. The name haunts me. Ezra. 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 The letters on this page were more pressed together, as if written in despair or ecstasy. Day 6. I feel like I'm falling apart, but it doesn't hurt. It's like it's inevitable. You know when you're being forgotten? I know. Ezra pressed the diary to his chest. His heart beat like a war drum. Each sentence was a knife of memory stuck in his mind. Alessia knew his name before he arrived, and she wasn't the only one. He got up and went to the mirror. Who was she? He asked aloud. He didn't answer anything. What did you do to her? The mirror's surface remained smooth. No altered reflection. No shadows. He placed his palm against the glass. It was warm. And then, slowly, words began to form, not with ink or light, but as if the letters were emerging from the mirror's inner mist. She was like you, but she didn't have time to remember. Ezra took a step back. Then, too, the mirror returned to normal. The woman in the diary, the previous guest. She had been there. She had felt everything. She had seen Alessia. She had loved and feared at the same time, like him now. But what had happened to her? That night, Ezra did not drink the wine, but the cup appeared full anyway. With every minute that passed in room 13, time seemed less reliable, reality less solid. He tried to maintain his lucidity, but his mind was giving way, not from weakness, but from attraction, as if everything there was tailor-made for your soul. The humidity in the room, the notes, the smell of perfume, the sentences in the diary, the voice in the mirror. And then she appeared again. Not in the mirror. This time, in the chair in front of the bed. Alessia. She was wearing a black robe that left part of her shoulders and thighs exposed. Her skin seemed to emit its own light. Her eyes, as always, were somberly calm. No surprise on her face, as if she had been there before, in this very place, at this very time. You found her, she said, in an almost maternal tone. Ezra did not respond. She was important, he continued, but she wasn't ready. You're closer. Ready for what? To remember. She stood up. He walked towards him, slowly, without a sound in his footsteps. She stopped inches from his body. Ezra held his breath. The heat emanating from her was physical, like sunlight filtered through water. I am your absence. She touched his chest. But I don't have to be anymore. Are you real? She tilted her head, a serene smile on her lips. You already know the answer, and disappeared, like smoke that dissipates without wind. Ezra fell to his knees, alone again, with the diary still in his hands. On the last pages, there was something new, written in fresh ink. If you're reading this, it's because she's back. She doesn't want to hurt you. She wants to remember with you. But be careful. Room 13 is not the end. It's the beginning. On the 5th night, Ezra stopped fighting logic. He no longer sought rational answers. He no longer tried to distinguish dream from reality, hallucination from presence, desire from delirium. It was as if time inside room 13 was dissolving, running down the velvet-lined walls, darkening the wine, erasing the edges of the known world. The previous guest's diary lay on the nightstand. With each reread, new words seemed to appear on the pages, as if she were still writing, as if she were observing everything from somewhere between the mirror and the sheet. Ezra laid down without turning off the light. He wanted to see her arrive, and deep down, he wanted her to find him awake. He didn't have to wait long. At exactly 2:12 a.m., the candle flames curved inward, as if the air were breathing backward. And then Alessia was there. In the mirror? No, sitting on the edge of the bed. She was wearing a wine-colored satin dress, or was it blood, that fit her body like a second skin. Her shoulders were bare. Her back was bare. Her hair was loose as if she had just gotten out of the shower. She was barefoot, and she was smiling. "You were waiting for me awake this time," he said, his voice low and warm. Ezra sat up, facing her. His chest heaved slightly. "I've seen you in the mirrors, in the pages of the diary. You've been here before." "I never left," he replied. "The thing is, you never allowed yourself to stay." "Stay where?" She came closer. She put her knees on the bed and crawled towards him with a feline slowness. Every movement seemed sculpted, every look calculated to the millimeter. But there was no falseness. It was as if her body had been made for that room, for that atmosphere, or maybe made for him. "Here," she said, touching his chest. "Inside what you locked away. Inside what you tried to forget." "Have we met?" She just looked at him. Then she moved one of her hands up to his neck and slowly pulled him in. Her forehead rested against his. "It's not a matter of remembering with your mind, Ezra. It's a matter of remembering with your body, with time, with what you've sacrificed to move forward." He could smell her. It was the same scent as the letter, the diary, the mirror. But now there was something else, flesh, heat, reality. "Who was the woman in the diary?" he whispered. "A shadow. Like you. Like me. Someone who tried to be a mirror before recognizing himself." Ezra took a deep breath. He wanted to touch her. He wanted to know if this time his fingers wouldn't pass through fog. He reached out and placed his hand on her shoulder. Alessia did not disappear. "You look real," he said, surprised. She smiled, with a look of unsettling tenderness. "You're starting to accept it." And then she kissed him. The kiss wasn't light. It wasn't immediate. It was thick, dark, a kiss that seemed to carry a memory with it, as if her lips were made of pieces of a past that Ezra's body still remembered. Her hands did not hesitate. They touched his chest, his shoulders, the back of his neck. But there was no rush. It was an old desire, a desire that is not afraid of time. As he hugged her tightly, an image appeared in her mind, fleeting, but clear. A garden, a stone courtyard. He and Alessia, sitting under a tree, laughing. She in a white dress. He with a book. The sound of running water. And Jasmine. He gasped, breaking the kiss. "That happened, didn't it?" She rested her face against his chest. "Yes. And no. Everything here is between what was and what still pulses. But you are feeling. And that is enough." He held her by the arms, as if she might slip away from reality at any moment. "Why did you call me back?" Alessia looked up, her eyes now shining with an ancient sadness. "Because I'm trapped, Ezra. Trapped in this mirror. Trapped in this room. Trapped in what you chose to forget. I don't remember doing anything." She placed her fingers on his lips. "You did what you had to do. To survive. We all do. But the price was losing me. And now, only you can set me free." "How?" She moved away slightly. She sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes fixed on the floor. When she spoke again, her voice had a new gravity. "There's a door. In the basement. Behind the bookcase. You must find it. There are the real mirrors. Not the ones that reflect, but the ones that guard." Ezra frowned. "Mirrors that hold what?" Alessia looked over her shoulder, and her eyes, for a second, didn't look human. "The part of you that belongs to me." She disappeared at dawn. Ezra woke up naked, sweaty, alone. The bed was unmade. The wine glass was broken on the floor. On the desk was a new note. A very short one. "It's time to go down. Alessia." Ezra stood up. He looked around. The room was warmer, darker, Or was he the one changing? He went to the bookshelf. He pushed the books aside. And then he saw it. A crack in the wall. Almost invisible. He forced it with his hands. The wall gave way. Behind her, a narrow, ancient door, locked with chains and wax seals. But on the floor lay the key, the same as the first day. Ezra held her, and I knew, from that moment on, there would be no turning back. The key felt heavier than before. Ezra turned it slowly on the chains that sealed the door behind the bookcase. A sharp crack echoed through the room, as if something very ancient had finally been released or awakened. The chains fell to the floor, and the wax seals cracked like the skin of rotten fruit. The wood creaked, and the door swung open of its own accord, revealing a spiral staircase that spiraled downward into pitch blackness. The air that rose through that hole smelled of musty velvet, sour wine, and jasmine. Ezra hesitated for a second, but going down seemed inevitable. Not out of courage, but out of recognition, as if this path had been waiting for him for much longer than his conscious life could comprehend. He took a lit candle from the bedside table and began his descent. The staircase seemed to descend further than the physical confines of the hotel would allow. The walls were covered in ancient, faded inscriptions. Some seemed to be in Latin, some in Old French, some in languages he didn't recognize but understood. Words like reflexus, devotio, memoria. With each step, the heat increased, but it was a humid, intimate heat, like that of a living body, as if the Hotel de Ether itself had a heart beating down there. At the end of the stairs, a door, red, with a velvety texture, as if covered in fabric instead of paint. In the center, the symbol of the broken mirror, now drawn with obsessive delicacy. Ezra placed his hand on her. He felt a slight pulsation, as if the door were breathing, and then she opened up. The hall was huge. No lamps, no windows, but still light. A blue light emanated from dozens of mirrors scattered across the walls and ceiling, suspended by thin chains. All oval, all alive. Ezra approached the first one. Didn't see his reflection. Instead, he saw a scene. He, younger, sat across from a woman. She was crying. He was saying something, but there was no sound. The woman turned her face, Alessia, with the same look he recognized now. The same dress from the night before. She touched his face, but he pulled away. Ezra stepped back. The mirror flickered. The scene changed. Now he stood in front of the mirror, years later, alone, older, looking at his own hands. And in the background of the image, Alessia, always her, smiling with eyes full of pain. Each mirror showed something different. Fragments, repressed memories, moments Ezra never remembered experiencing, but he knew they were real. He could feel them in his bones, in his stomach, in his skin. In the center of the room was a low table covered with a dark cloth. On it lay an envelope, white, with your name, Ezra Delacroix. He opened it. Inside, token, accommodation contract, room 13, conditions. The guest is responsible for the maintenance of the fragments. The stay is subject to the return of the full memory. Departure is only permitted upon full acceptance of the reflection. Signed by Ezra Delacroix. Date, October 17th. No year specified. Ezra recoiled, startled. The signature was his. The lines, the handwriting identical. But he never remembered signing it. It was then that he felt it. Behind him. The breath. He turned around slowly. Alessia was there. But it wasn't like before. She was pale. Her hair stuck to her face, as if she had come from a place where time stood still. Her eyes burned. There were tears in the corners, but also fire. A kind of longing that bordered on hatred. You left me here, she said. The voice reverberated off the walls like a suppressed scream. You signed and left me trapped in this room. I was what you chose to forget in order to remain free. Ezra was shaking. I don't remember. I swear. But your signature is there. And the mirrors confirm it. She approached, her bare feet tapping lightly on the stone floor. Each step was like a judgment. You loved me, Ezra. And when you realized that I knew parts of you that even you couldn't stand, you ran away. You locked me in here. You created this room with your own mind, and you disappeared. He stepped back. This is crazy. She stopped. Her face was pressed against his. It's memory. And then he pushed him. Ezra fell backwards into one of the mirrors. When he touched it, he was sucked into the image. Now he was in another space. A mirrored room. Itself, repeated infinitely in every direction. And in the center, Alessia in white, lying on a bed, sleeping. He came closer. He sat down next to her. She opened her eyes. Do you remember now? Ezra felt the tears rise in his throat. Yes, he remembered. He remembered Alessia. He remembered loving her. He remembered his promise to never forget her. And he remembered the fear. The moment she wanted to go deeper. And he ran away. The moment she said, "If you forget me, I die." And he chose to forget. Back in the underground hall, Ezra woke up on his knees, his eyes wet, his breathing heavy. Alessia was standing, looking at him with a new look. There was no more anger. Just wait. Are you ready? Ezra nodded. What do I need to do? She pointed to the central mirror. Come in and get me. He walked, and he entered the mirror. Ezra stepped through the mirror as if he were stepping into warm water. There was no pain, no resistance, just a slight pressure in his chest, like when you hold your breath before a deep dive. And then the sound disappeared. The heat from his body disappeared, and with bare feet, he stepped onto a glass floor, surrounded by an endless sky. But it wasn't heaven. It was the reverse of room 13, the world where memories lived alone. Ahead of him, Alessia. She was lying on her back, naked to the waist, her long hair streaming down her pale back. She was sitting at a table where there was only a quill dipped in black ink and a closed book. Ezra recognized the cover. Red leather, the same as the previous guest's diary. Or maybe it was the same diary. But here, with all the pages blank, she turned around slowly. The eyes were darker now, as if the pupils took up all the space. There was no more anger, just an exhausted silence, like someone who had waited longer than time would allow. This is the end of the reflex, he said. Ezra took a step forward, feeling the ground vibrate beneath his feet. I remember. You, the garden, the promise. She nodded. You left me here, so you wouldn't have to feel. You thought you could move on without me. But I still felt for both of us. Forgive me, he said. She came closer. She touched his face. I didn't come to find excuses, Ezra. I came to find a decision. She opened the red book. The pages were all written on, but not in ink. Each line pulsed like veins, red and alive. This is the contract. Ezra looked. His name was there, but it wasn't the same signature as before. It was more recent, more shaky. What do I need to do? Read and accept, or forget it forever. He hesitated. What if I accept? You feel everything again. Absolutely everything. The love, the desire, the loss, the guilt, everything that you locked inside me. What if I don't accept? She walked away, sitting back down. You leave the hotel. You go back to your life. And I disappear. Forever. Ezra closed his eyes. Memories came flooding back. Her lips, the smell of her skin, the taste of a night in Florence, the silent crying after a cowardly act, the escape, the absence. He took the feather, and he signed. The mirror exploded into silence. Ezra was thrown back into the underground hall, falling to his knees before the table. Alessia was there, her eyes closed. He came closer, held out his hand. She opened her eyes. She smiled, and for the first time, it didn't disappear. Room 13 was different. The walls no longer breathed. The curtains were open, and behind them windows. Real ones. The sky outside was blue, the sun shining gently. Ezra was in bed, dressed. The bottle of wine was untouched. The diary was on a nightstand, now closed with a white rose on it. Alessia was lying next to him. Real. Hot. Present. She turned. She touched his face. You are here. For the first time, he said. She smiled. A tired smile, but genuine. Then maybe we can get started. In the mirror at the foot of the bed, there was only a reflection. One. No shadows behind. No hidden figures. Just Ezra. and Alessia, together, at the right time. Ezra Delacroix woke to the sound of his own heartbeat. It wasn't a shock, it wasn't panic. It was his body remembering that it still existed, that there was still weight, warmth, flesh. Beside him, the space in the bed still held the outline of Alessia's body. But she wasn't there anymore. He sat up slowly. Room 13 was normal. But normal wasn't what he knew. It was as if the room had been rewritten. There were no more veils, no more covered mirrors, no more still shadows waiting for him. The walls were alive in a different way now, as if time were flowing again. Ezra walked to the window. Yes, there was a window now. And on the other side, the hills of Verona under the pale morning sun. The sound of a distant bell echoed. The breeze came in lightly, scented with jasmine and damp earth. There was life, but he felt something still incomplete. He dressed slowly. Black shirt, dark pants, hair undone. He walked to the mirror, and he saw something strange. His reflection smiled. It wasn't him smiling. It was the reflection smiling to itself. Ezra took a step back. The mirror trembled, as if the liquid surface was vibrating. And then she appeared again. Alessia, but not on the other side. Next to him, dressed in the same burgundy satin as the night before. But now the fabric was new, wrinkle-free. She was serene, but with a piercing gaze. "You're almost ready," he said. "Almost." She nodded. "You accepted the memory. You signed the contract. But there's still one last thing missing." "What?" She raised her finger and pointed at the mirror. "You're still here." In the reflection, Ezra looked, and he understood. Her body was there, in the room. But part of her was still trapped on the other side. The part that closed itself off when he ran away. The part he never wanted to see completely. The part that contained the fear, the pain, and also the love he believed he didn't deserve. "You must cross," she said, for the last time. Ezra took a deep breath. He touched the surface of the mirror. This time he didn't dive. It was sucked. The world inside the mirror was white, absolute white, and in the center a boy. The boy he had been. Alone, sitting on an old staircase, hugging his knees. The same expression he saw in childhood photos, but never allowed himself to remember. Loneliness. Ezra walked over. The boy looked up. "You left me here," said the boy. Ezra knelt down. "I know, and I'm sorry." The boy reached out his hand. Ezra held on, and then the memory came back in one piece. It wasn't just Alessia. It was everything. The stifled childhood, the broken promises, the father's silence, the mother's absence, the hidden loves, the accumulated guilt, the escape from oneself, the refusal to feel. Everything that made him lock Alessia away. Everything that made him lock himself away. When he opened his eyes, he was back in the room. But now, with everything, Alessia was in front of him, crying, but smiling. "Now you are whole." Ezra walked over. He touched her face. He kissed her eyes, her mouth, her shoulders, like someone kissing themselves after years of abandonment. And for the first time, she cried without breaking down. The Hotel D. Ether no longer appears on maps. Ezra left the room with no bags, no documents, no watch, only with the red diary in his hand. The pages were blank, but he knew, if he wanted, he could rewrite everything. He walked down the hotel stairs. No one at the reception, no one in the hallways. As he walked out the gate, key number 13 crumbled to dust in his pocket. They say that room 13 only reappears for those who have forgotten too much about themselves, for those who loved and ran away, for those who left someone stuck in the reflection. Ezra Delacroix now knew this. And I knew one more thing. Some women only exist in the mirror you refuse to look at, and some stories can only be remembered when you're ready to start them over.